Fellow Rotarians, may I now request our Swati Mayakar to kindly introduce our guest speaker and recipient of the award, Mr. Y.P. Trivedi.
Good afternoon, friends. I really consider it a privilege that I am introducing Mr. Y.P. Trivedi. In the words of our director, Praveen Ram Gandhi, he says that he considers Mr. Y.P. Trivedi as one of the topmost intelligentsia of the country. And I cannot agree more on this. As a junior partner in a firm of chartered accountants, we used to consider it as a privilege if we are taken to the chamber of Mr. Y.P. Trivedi for any tax matter consultation, or if we are taken to the tribunal to hear him arguing. The kind of detailing and the mastery he had on the taxation laws, it was really a big learning lesson for all us junior chartered accountants. And I really agree that he's a absolutely master in his field, and he is now a lawyer at Supreme Court also, and there cannot be a better person than him in this field. With this, let me give his achievements, all what he has done. He has been very active in economic field as a chairman of All India Business Association, chairman of Indo-African Chamber of Commerce, ex-honorary council of Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, ex-president Indian Merchant Chambers, and many more. He has been on many government committees like Standing Committee on Finance, Consultative Committee of Ministry of Commerce, Committee of Parliament on Official Language, House Committee, Rajya Sabha, member of Joint Parliamentary Committee on 2G. In the professional field, he has been ex-president of Chamber of Tax Consultants, ex-president Income Tax Appellate Tribunal Bar Association, ex-member Direct Taxes Advisory Committee for Western Region. In political field, as we all know, it's a great privilege that he is a member of a Rajya Sabha, ex-member of our Rajya Sabha, and it's really a most creditworthy for him. National Treasurer and Convener of Economic Affairs Cell of Congress Party. In commercial field, he's on the board of many corporates like Reliance Industries, Emami Limited, Supreme Industries Limited, Zodiac Clothing Company Limited, Sai Service Station Limited, New Consolidated Construction Company Limited. He has also served as chairman director in past with Central Bank of India, Raymond Synthetics, Dena Bank, Wellspun Syntex, and many more. Not only that, he has also believed in sharing his knowledge by education, and that is why he was ex-honorary lecturer for master's degree in law in Bombay University, and I'm sure many students must have benefited by his knowledge. He was a committee member, Indian Cultural League of Education Society and Commerce at Vashi, faculty member for taxation course on SNDT. He was active in medical field, has helped as a secretary and treasurer of Indian Medical Research Society. He was conducting research programs at JJ Hospital, Harkisan Das Hospital. Even sports field, he has been very active. He was ex-president and committee member of Cricket Club of India. He was very active in social field, being ex-president of WIA, Indo-American Society, Junior Chamber International, Central Committee, and he has won many awards. The most noteworthy being Hamlook Foundation Indira Gandhi Award 1988, Gurjar Ratna Award. He has honorary doctorate of law from Odisha, Rashtriya Sanman for being one of the highest taxpayers during the assessment years 1994-95 to 1998-99. And he has received Lifetime Achievement Award by Free Press Group. And we all are aware of his weekly taxation writing in the Economic Times. May I now request Mr. Samir to read out the citation of Mr. Y.P. Trivedi?
Thank you, Swati. It gives me immense pleasure on behalf of the Rotary Club of Bombay to present the Shri Praveen Chandra V. Gandhi Award for Excellence in Public Life to Shri Y.P. Trivedi, former Member of Parliament, of Rajya Sabha, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court of India, for the leadership he has displayed while heading various industry and trade associations with distinction, for his contribution to public life as a distinguished member of Parliament, for the value placed on his presence in the many corporate roles he has undertaken, for leaving his indelible stamp of authority in the fields of education, sport, medicine, and social space. May I request President Ramraj Mehta to confer the award.
Thank you, Samir. It is my pleasure to give you the award, Mr. Trivedi, which I will forwarding to you very shortly. It reads, Rotary Club of Bombay is proud to present Shri Praveen Chandra V. Gandhi Award for Excellence in Public Life to Shri Y.P. Trivedi for his distinctive leadership while heading various industry and trade associations and for his contribution to public life as a distinguished member of Parliament. Congratulations, Mr. Trivedi. Mr. Trivedi, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Am I all right now?
Yes, thank you. And may I please request you to address the members of our club?
My very dear friend Ram Gandhi, the president of the Rotary Club of Bombay, Mr. Mehta, his illustrious office bearers and friends. I am very happy to receive this award named after late Shri Praveen Chandra Gandhi, and I'll be probably not following my conscience if I don't pay tribute to the great man, Shri Praveen Chandra Gandhi, whom I always considered as my role model. Praveen Chandra Bhai was a great soul, and I always used to treat him as a person whose achievements I should try to emulate. Not that he was the leader of the Indian Merchants Chamber for a number of years, and FICCI and SOCHM, or that he was connected with Bharati Vidya Bhavan, journalism, Saurashtra Trust, banking. What is most inspiring about him was that he was a very versatile man. And I always believed in versatility. In my practice also, even though I was at the top of my practice and earning fabulously well, still I believed that being a lawyer only is not the end all and be all of life. One should always consider about life as a wide spectrum and try to be versatile. Praveen Chandra Bhai Gandhi was also associated with Indian National Theatre. He was in the field of theatre. In all fields one can consider about, his presence was there. And I always considered him as my role model. I am today humbled and at the same time feeling proud that I am the recipient of this award. After having paid my tributes to my role model, I'll come to the subject. I have very little time at my disposal. I know the Rotary time schedule. And the subject which I have chosen is a subject of such wide amplitude that I can probably address series of lectures on that. The point is, the subject is, why should I pay my taxes? And the prompt question which would arise automatically is, why should I not pay my taxes? Because as in the famous case of Commissioner of Wealth Tax versus Arvind Narottam Das, the Supreme Court, Justice Sabyasachi Mukherjee had said, people are feeling by and large, there is so much of corruption, so much of ostentatious expenditure, so much of bureaucracy. Why should I pay my taxes, which is going on for all these useless expenditure? But at the same time, paying the taxes, according to me, is one of the bounden duty of a citizen. Cicero, while addressing Roman Senate, had said that these taxes are the sinews of state. And Justice Holmes had said that I am never happier than when I am paying my taxes, because that is the price which I am paying for my civilization. Now, this is the actual field of taxation. But how taxes have to be collected? Our philosopher, the ancient philosopher and rishis, were very prompt in giving the reply. And Chanakya, in his Arthasastra, said that a king should collect his taxes like a bee collecting honey. It collects the honey, but it doesn't destroy the flower. In the same way, the king should collect his taxes. And when the king doesn't do that and tries to destroy not only the flower, but the entire plant, then people are certainly aghast. There was a time when we were paying taxes at the rate of income tax at the rate of 97.75%. On the top of it, in the Caldors concept of integrated tax system, there was wealth tax, there was gift tax, there was expenditure tax, there was estate duty if you leave something by at the end of it. And the total of all this would come to more than 100% of your total income. Naturally, people become desperate. They can't afford to do this. They can't become poorer every day by day. And that is why they are finding ways and means how to avoid taxes within the framework of law. And thereafter, some people go a little step further and say, forget the framework of law, we'll generate black money. Within the framework of law, I got many instances, some of them very hilarious, but I would restrain myself in not mentioning all of them, because then I think I will have to only end up doing that. But I remember about a person who had a very petite secretary, and she was demanding a fur coat. The fur coat he wanted to give. He didn't know how to get deduction for that. He went to a lawyer who was a tax expert and told him, you can try to kindly get me a deduction for the fur coat which I am going to give to my secretary. And the lawyer, who was quite quick-witted, came out with a solution. He said, all right, go ahead and do it. And in his income tax return, he said, this is what I require for covering my computer. And there was no restriction on what material you use for covering your computer. So he got deduction for the fur coat which he gave to his secretary. But what I am saying is that ultimately we should think of a system of law which is understandable and which is acceptable to people. And that is why I have been saying, and I mentioned it also on the floor of the parliament, that any articulate system of taxation should have three characteristics. First is, it must be simple. I know that an income tax law cannot be as simple as a lullaby. But at the same time, it should not be so difficult, so complicated that I very often advise my clients who are suffering from insomnia that please try to read Income Tax Act at night. You will go to sleep within 2 hours. The point is, the law act is very complicated. Would you believe the 1961 Act was brought in order to simplify the previous legislation, which was the 1922 Act. But within a short span of time from 61 till today, it has undergone 5,000 amendments, more than 5,000 amendments. And if you ask anybody, including myself, it is what was the state of law at any particular time, I have to scratch my head, go through various provisions, various books in order to tell you what was the exact position of law at that particular time, at that particular juncture. So law cannot be that complicated. I know law cannot be very simple. There was a measure and there was a time when they wanted to introduce an income tax code. And I was a member of parliament at that time. I had openly supported. I said one of the most desirable legislation is a simplified income tax code. But somehow or other, like all government measures, it went on the shelf and now nobody is trying to bring it back from there. So I personally believe that one of the requirement of an ideal tax system is that it should be simple. Then we make it complicated. I remember a man went to a bookstore and he wanted to buy income tax act. She went to the owner and said, please give me a copy of the income tax act. And the man said, sorry, we don't deal in periodicals. Because it has become like a periodical. Every time there is some amendment, something or the other, and your today's act may not be good even after within 6 months' time, because some amendments will come. So I believe the law must be simple. The second requirement is that the law must be uniform. Today we have got so many high courts. Every time a state is carved out, it also gets a new high court. Now all these high courts amongst themselves, they give different interpretation of the same provisions. There are explanations, there are provisos, there is explanation to proviso, there is a proviso to explanation, and as if the English syllabus is not sufficient, there are sections which say 245M, 245X, 245XYZ. Like that, there are so many things, and there is no uniformity. Now, these days when they have come out with this faceless representation at Income Tax Separate Tribunal, they asked me to head the movement that this is not proper. Because Justice Tagla had said that justice is not a cloistered virtue. It must be open to everybody. Now, if you have a faceless litigation and you only give representation in writing, it is like going to a temple where you cannot ring the bell and where you have to give your petition only in writing, your prayers only in writing. That cannot be. So all of them, all India people, they wanted to make a representation. And pardon me, I tell you very frankly, I don't want to name it, but they were saying, let us find out a high court which is most easily available and where we can get a verdict in our favor. When there are so many high courts, they give judgments differently, so there must be some uniformity. There must be some centralized tax court which gives a judgment which everybody understands, which everybody can follow. That is the second requirement. Simplicity, uniformity. And third thing which is required is people's willingness to pay. You can't ignore because you are going to recover money from people. And you should remember in mind that how taxes have to be collected. It is something like the sun, which is drawing water from the ocean. Then it gives back in the form of clouds and rains. In the same way, when taxes are collected, it should go back to the public. It should go back to the public for their betterment. Today, nobody knows how the monies are spent and the way in which monies are being wasted. One just wonders. I can understand we have to look after our defense. The taxes are very necessary. Without taxes, our society cannot survive. But it must take into consideration how much people are agreeable to pay. It must be reasonable. You can't have something which is so stupid as 97.75% rate of tax plus wealth tax plus expenditure tax. Actually, Mr. Caldor, when he gave these proposals, he had said that the rates of all these would be very, very low. If you want to have integrated tax system, have it. If you earn the money, pay the income tax. If you save, you pay the wealth tax. If you part with it, you pay capital gains tax. If you spend it, you pay expenditure tax. If you gift it, you pay gift tax. And if you are lucky enough that anything is left by you at the end of your life, then you pay estate duty. All that is very good. But it should be reasonable rates. If you're exorbitant confiscatory rates, then people just will not pay. It will be an idle exercise on paper. And I think sometimes I am wondering whether the bold suggestion given by Subramanian Swamy that income tax should be abolished, whether it is practicable or not. But I think it is something which is worth considering. It can be substituted like what is happening in many other countries which are tax-free, like Dubai and others. You have some sort of indirect tax on the withdrawal from banks or on the dividend distribution tax, where you take the tax at the hands of the company. Abolish income tax act, there will be no black money left because nobody has to make black money. The corporate tax remained image, but income tax can be removed. And I think somebody has to give serious thinking. Serious thinking is necessary on two fronts. One front is, if you want to retain income tax act, you must simplify. You cannot have this ununderstandable law. You must have a simple income tax law which can be understood by a person who is desirable to take some pains, and that is necessary. Or otherwise, you think of abolishing income tax act, keep corporation tax, but individual income tax act you remove. It is practicable, nothing impossible. It only contributes about 6% to the total revenue, and probably the expenditure which has to be incurred for collecting this tax may be so high that it is not worth its while. But all these will happen later. Till then, let us pay our taxes and maintain our civilization, maintain our society, and maintain our culture. Thank you very much. I hope I have not exceeded my time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Trivedi. That was extremely informative. If you have some more for us, yes, we are willing to listen to you even longer.
Thank you.
However, I'm sure you will take some questions from us now.
I don't mind. These
Thank you.
questions.
Mudit, will you ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you, sir, very much for your lucid talk. Sir, Chanakya said taxes should be 1/6 of your income. Just now take petrol and diesel, the taxes are over 200%. And those are indirect taxes, they're direct gift, etc. So what would you say about Chanakya's wisdom of 1/6 to now of a plethora and ridiculous rates? Thank you, sir.
I agree with you, it is draconian. See, there is a difference between direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes are the taxes which, when you meet a gangster on the road, he holds out a knife and takes money from you. That is direct taxes. Indirect taxes are when you are sleeping and your wife takes away your purse and from there she removes some money. That is indirect taxes. You don't know it till it hurts you. But I agree with you that this petrol and this thing requires a second look. When I was in Delhi, I had a discussion, and when this pricing was made totally free, then something should have been done. It is ironical that in Delhi, petrol can cost 100 rupees, in Nepal, it can cost 50 rupees, and people are doing smuggling of petrol from from Nepal to Delhi. Unthinkable. Somebody is not applying mind. Where are our economic ministries? Where are they? What are they doing about it? It should be put in the GST list, and the states putting their own excise duty, center putting its own excise duty. It should all be abolished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. SV, you had a question?
Thank you, President Fali. First of all, Yogendra Bhai, thank you very much for an excellent speech. I've heard you speak before as well, and as always, you've never pointed. Your topic itself is very correct because it goes back to what the Upved Artha Shastra of of Chanakya, which is Upved to to one of our Veds. It clearly says that taxation is very critical as part of economics. Keeping that in mind, and especially if you go back to history in any civilization, the major source of revenue was taxation of agriculture. Because there was no industry largely those days. There was a bit of a service that used to happen in terms of trade, in terms of exports. Now, given that, what is a wisdom? I appreciate that you have a high level of exemption for agriculture, but don't you think that there should be some, at least a thought in mind? Even if you look at modern terms, GDP has three components: manufacturing, services, and agriculture. Okay, agriculture may be less than maybe 15-20% of the overall GDP, but that just escapes, and that's used by many to kind of convert the black money to white. Your thoughts on this would be very helpful.
No, I agree with you. As they say, good economics is bad politics. Tax exemption of tax on agricultural income is a nightmare. Why is it necessary? Most of the people who are earning income, agricultural income beyond their expectation, and they are all having a ball of a time. Today, I was told by a Mercedes dealer, it may be difficult to sell a Mercedes in urban areas, but if I go to rural areas, I can sell it without any difficulty. They are very prosperous. You may keep the level high, but beyond a particular level, why these politicians should be allowed to have their black money converted into white by saying this is an agricultural income? It's something which is unthinkable. There are agricultural income tax act in some of the states because it's a state subject. We have decided to subject of legislation into three parts: the state list, the central list, and the concurrent list. This is the state list. And most of the states, they have agricultural income tax, but they are not implementing because it hurts them. It is like taxing the politicians themselves who have the agricultural income, which are right or bogus, one doesn't know. So I think I agree with you heartily. Somebody should take up this issue, and agricultural income, maybe beyond 5 lakhs, should be brought to tax.
Just a related quick question. Do you see this initiative by the present government to push through the farm laws will eventually, maybe 5-10 years down the road, bring that income into the legit, or you don't see that happening?
You are dragging me into a subject which is highly controversial. But if you ask me very frankly, I believe all the three bills are very good. They are in the interest of the farmers. The agitation is totally misguided. But I agree with what Mr. Gurcharan Das had stated, that if 10% of the time would have been spent in explaining the laws before they are legislated, it would have been better. People don't understand what is it. All the three bills are very good for the farmers, and they will reap the harvest after some time. If India has to have second green revolution, doubling the income of the farm sector, then these bills are very necessary.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But it's a very controversial thing. I don't know whether I'll be around tomorrow.
Ram, please go ahead.
YB, thank you as usual for a great talk. Very, very recent. I have a question outside the taxation, because you have such a varied life. So taxation is, of course, your main subject, your forte. But you have varied life. So I have another question I want to ask you. This point of in politics, that is the question of having one election for state and center. What do you think of that idea?
What is that? What is the question, please?
The Prime Minister is asking a debate on one election, state and center together.
I believe he is absolutely right. It is totally stupid to have every election every month. What is this? Half of the time is wasted, in people going and addressing various congregation for voting. I think one election is very necessary. I even going to go a little further and say we should try the presidential system in 1 or 2 states, like the American system. Have a governor and let him have his advisors from the academic field, not necessarily from the legislative assemblies or anywhere. And if it is successful, I think we should go for an American system of presidential system, where you have your Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, from amongst the experts who may not be members of your legislature or parliament. I agree with you. And at the same time, I agree that there should be one set of elections for all the states and center together. Mr. Modi is right, but there is no political support. But who would like to X one's own leg? पग पे कौन कुहाड़ी मारेगा?
Thank you, YP.
Thank you. Pradeep?
Thank you, Mr. President. YP, congratulations on your winning the Praveen Chandra V. Gandhi Award on behalf of Rotary Club of Bombay. I'm so happy and proud that you are the recipient of this award. Sir, whenever you talked and given a speech, talked to some people, you always shared a couple of your humorous experiences. Can you please share with some experiences of yours to us with today?
I don't know whether this is a forum, but I can tell you James Caulfield in his book Tax Gatherers, where he starts by saying the Americans die of 3 diseases: sex, tax, and cancer. And there he has given one illustration about a bachelor who claimed the dependent child's allowance. And the income tax officer was a little kind. He said this is not proper. So he called him. He said, what is it? You are a bachelor, your status in your return, in your claiming your child's allowance. This seems to be some typographical mistake. And he said politely, yes, it's a mistake, all right, but it's not typographical, it's stenographical. I think if we can, I can multiply so many instances, but it will require a long time, you know. This is probably not the forum.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do we have any more questions? Mr. Trivedi, I don't think we have any more questions. So if you have a couple of more of these humorous anecdotes, why don't you give us anecdotes and tell us about something like that? Go ahead, please.
Well, there are all many things I can go on telling. I don't know whether you would like to relish them. Man had a problem of taxation. And he went to his lawyer. And he says, what are my chances? And the lawyer said, maybe or may not be. And the client said, why do you say that? And the lawyer said, I'll give my own illustration. Last year, I was sued by my wife for divorce on the ground that I'm impotent. I was also sued by my maid servant on the ground that I am the illegitimate father of her child. And I lost both the cases. I lost my case. I lost here and I lost there also. So this is what it means, the vagaries of law. I can go on saying, but let us keep some another day for that.
Thank you, YP.
Thank you. We have one more question, please. Pratap, please go ahead.
Mr. Trivedi, I wanted to revert back to the taxation element and seek some answers for this question. We have recently, the tax department has now said that they want to do this faceless assessments, and you've seen over the years, decades, that it was always a different way that these assessments were done. How do you see this faceless assessment actually resulting? Will it result in a quicker and a much more easier form of taxation and conclusions, or will it lead to many more litigations in time to come?
No, I was always believed it should be left to the SSC whether he wants a physical hearing or whether he wants to be faceless. If he is a small SSC, he will say, I want faceless. If he is a larger SSC and if he has a larger stake, he will say, I want my arguments to be heard. There is nothing like people like Nani Palkhiwala or R.J. Kola resounding in the court and arguing the cases to instead thereof to say that you put everything on paper. I think it is not proper. It should be made optional. If you want to make it faceless assessment, why not make faceless parliament? Where the members don't have to speak at all. Whatever they have to say, they'll put it on paper and give it to the speaker. I think you must have. There is nothing like, I said, this is like going to the temple and giving your prayers in writing without ringing the bell and without chanting the bhajans. It's not proper.
So you see that in the future, there will be a need to do either of the two.
Either of the two. That is what I think we are moving the High Court for a reach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trivedi, spending the afternoon with us. Thank you so much. Satyan, may I please request you to give the official vote of thanks?
With pleasure, Fali. Thank you, Trivedi ji, for addressing us and sharing with us your valuable insights and also regaling us with quite a few anecdotes. We really enjoyed those. And Trivedi ji, for taking this afternoon out and spending time with us. As a token of our appreciation, we'll be lighting up a rural household using solar power on your behalf. And we'll be sending you the certificate shortly.